If anyone is feeling like me, it's a little late on a Thursday. Energy is running low, so I'm sure people will be joining in a little bit. Oh, congrats, Cheryl. I sorry, I missed that in the chat. It's very exciting.
No worries, no worries.
Just another quick reminder, if you're going to put anything in the chat, please make sure to put it to everyone and not just hosts and panelists, because we do have some folks tuning in from, the regular Zoom link so they can follow along. We do have kind of a hefty agenda, so why don't we get going on it? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Since this is our first meeting of FY25, I'm going to ask everyone if they could just introduce themselves, and if more people join, then they can just, put their name and affiliation in the chat. So I will go first. Hi, everyone. Addison Coley. You guys have received several emails from me. I am the legislative director at EEC and the facilitator of these council meetings. So if you have any questions ever, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I will pass it along to Sarah Volkanat.
Hi, thanks, Addison. Sarah Volkanat, Associate Commissioner of Program Innovation Support. And Ellen, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Grondine, Senior Associate Commissioner for Workforce Development, and I'll pass it on to Sarah Cian.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sarah Cian, Workforce Development Specialist at EEC. And I'll pass it to Pam Rue.
Hi, good afternoon. Pam Rue, Director of Educational Technology and Instructional Design, and I'll pass it off to Jocelyn.
Thanks, Pam. Jocelyn Bound, Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Program Support and Innovation, and I will pass it to Jamie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie Beaudry. I'm a Program Development Specialist at EEC, and I am tossing the baton to you, Eugenia.
Hi, I'm Eugenia Soilis. I'm the Director of External Engagement at EEC, and I will pass to Lisa.
So that exactly.
Oh no, Lisa's got background noise, so I will pass.
Sorry, major audio
No problem.
in our house today.
No problem at all.
Karsha, Director of Workforce Development for the Massachusetts Association of Community Colleges. Nice to see you all.
And with that, we'll pass it along to Emily.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Kamizi. I'm an aide for a barber, and today I'm here on her behalf. So it's nice to see you all. I'll pass it to Heidi.
Hello, I'm Heidi Kaufman. I'm the Executive Director of Education at the Metro West YMCA, and I will pass it to Leslie.
Hi, Heidi.
Hello.
I'm Leslie Kinney. I'm the Director of Head Start and Child Care for South Middlesex Opportunity Council, and I will pass it to Ed.
Thanks. I'm Ed Lambert. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education. I'll pass it to Michelle.
Thanks, Ed. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Licio. I'm Speaker Mariano's appointee to the advisory.
And with that, we can pass it along to Chris.
Thanks, Addison, and thanks, everybody. Chris Power, Chief of Staff here at EEC, and it's good to see everybody for the first of 4 quarterly meetings for the Workforce Council this fiscal year. Before we dive into the agenda that we have, there's a couple quick updates really in the space of the FY25 budget, and I'll invoke the commissioners for anyone who joined us this morning, acknowledgement of sort of the redundancy. This was obviously a part of our board presentation. So if folks haven't seen those slides, if someone could drop a link into that board meeting, please feel free to pop in and take a look at the highlights there. But I think worth mentioning with this group as we think about embarking on conversations related to workforce, sort of as a baseline of sort of what we're looking at as we walk into fiscal year 25. And I think first and foremost, just a lot of gratitude for, I think, the continued investment in the space, and acknowledgement and a real commitment we saw from our colleagues and partners in the legislature in sort of identifying areas that we know need attention and sustaining investments in the things we know are working. And also we have some sort of new work to do in this year's budget in the workforce space, in the economic development space, which is exciting. And again, grateful for the opportunity to sort of tackle and put those dollars to work. But I think the big headline here, and I think everybody knows this, obviously fully funded C3 that's codified in statute, which is a big and tremendous deal, and it's taken a lot of work and a lot of effort for folks to make that. It's a big part of the way we think about workforce and stabilizing a field that's sort of coming out of COVID-19. Really felt the impacts and repercussions as a lot of the challenges that existed pre-COVID were deeply exacerbated. But C3, in codifying C3 and funding it, we're one of the only states in the country that has committed to the same level of funding that we saw sort of through federal funding and through the pandemic. And so part of our board meeting just a few weeks ago was really talking about what the next iteration was. We do have a bullet here, sort of routine business that around providing a quick update on C3. If folks didn't get a chance to catch the board meeting, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But other highlighted areas here, obviously an investment in childcare financial assistance. That's about $872 million. What that means for us practically right now is, for all intents and purposes, that's effectively like a level fund for us on caseload. It's definitely an area that we're going to be watching as we sort of think about sustaining and maintaining the families that are in our caseload today in CCFA, and very mindful of what that means for access and affordability for families. So our teams are working closely on monitoring and managing. We do have controls in place right now for vouchers. Those are going to remain in place. And we're going to be keeping a close eye on a wait list that as of right now, I believe is around 26,000 children. So a watch area, one that, obviously is I think an important piece of, we think, both size of investment, the role that it has for families, how the interplay between dollars going into the field to support providers, educators, and families. The other thing I'll call out here is CPPI. We had an investment in CPPI that allows us to maintain a lot of the organizations we were able to expand to last year, a lot of the communities we were able to expand to. It doesn't allow for new expansion. The governor had proposed sort of higher investment to sort of continue to try to reach communities, but we do have enough money to continue to work with those folks we brought in from last year. And so I believe there was about 7 communities, which is great. And those folks are in planning and moving into implementation. So excited for the continued growth and reach of that program. Really pertinent to this conversation, and we'll talk a little bit about career pathways with a little more depth shortly. But Career Pathways is a program that actually saw a reduction this year. This is sort of in the same ballpark as the Free Community College initiative that was funded in this budget, which is on its own a really great and amazing thing as we think about workforce development, career readiness, all of those things, and the important role that community college plays in our economic success. I think one of the things that came to our realization as folks started to try to engage with this is the reality that a lot of our educators have, which is they may be enrolled in a semester for 1 credit course. So they're in 3 or 3 credit courses, but just 1. So they might be pursuing CDA or another course as they're working. And so a lot of them are not eligible for free community college. So we're working with our colleagues over at DHE right now to look for strategies to best support folks that are caught and well supported by Career Pathways. So we'll certainly be coming back to this group and making sure people are updated on what that progress looks like in the short term. I'll pause there. Jocelyn, I don't know if you want to get ahead of anything that you had later in the deck, or if there's anything I missed there on Career Pathways in particular.
No, I think you queued up some of the topics that we have coming quite well.
Fantastic. And then just to not belabor this, like I said, if you want to sort of follow along in the highlights, please visit the board deck. We do have a lot of outside sections too. We had, I think, a total, Addison, looking at you, of like 15 or 20 outside sections. So busy year in early education as we think about codification of a lot of work. Some of the things there include a new student loan forgiveness program, which we're going to be working with our colleagues at DHE to stand up. A codification of an early educator scholarship program, which Jocelyn and Ellen and Sarah will talk about a little bit more later. Obviously, the codification of C3 and CCFA eligibility and cost-informed rate setting. A $2.5 million investment in supporting employer supported care strategies and pilots, and a new data advisory commission that includes a lot of organizations that we work pretty closely with. So we're excited to be standing that up in the next few months as well, as we think about really committing ourselves to being a data informed and data driven agency. So again, please take a look at those slides. A lot to do this year. We're going to be a busy agency with a lot of updates and a lot of reporting obligations that come along with a lot of this work. So there'll be much to share as we sort of make our way through what is no doubt a big to-do list for the year, but all good things, I think, for the field, for the families we serve, for the educators we work with, the programs that are running in the state. So again, just grateful to our legislative colleagues here, and if anyone's listening, for that sort of sustained commitment and recognition of just how important it is and how valuable it is to invest in this field and really try to move the needle in a few different areas. So I'll pause there on budget. If anyone has any brief questions, I don't want to take too much time for what's a really, I think, informative and engaging agenda. Hearing none. Great. And I will say, I'm probably going to pop out for just a minute. I'm actually in Clinton today for the governor's announcement of the Literacy Launch Initiative, celebrating early literacy. So I think that's going to get started in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So I might pop out and come back, but exciting day here in Clinton as we think about early literacy in the quality space. And yeah, just happy to be able to be with you while I'm here though. So Addison, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you and appreciate those updates. Yes, so if anyone has any further questions about budget, I put the link to our board meeting that we held last week in the chat. If you guys are having trouble sleeping and you want to watch 3-hour board meeting, there's your link to it. The slides are also there as well if you have any questions. I will be sending out these slides after the end of this meeting. So you guys will have a nice follow-up with materials as well. So with that, I am going to start sharing my screen and get this presentation going.
Thanks, Addison. So glad to be here today to provide some updates. We've been doing a lot of work in the on the workforce side. The first topic for today is to look into to provide an update and get you some feedback on where we are with the credentialing work. This slide should be familiar. This is sort of where we ended at the last meeting, kind of giving you a sense of what's coming up. And so really we are going to focus on all these things today. The one thing I do want to say is nothing is baked that we're showing you. We're not coming to you with something final and complete, but I think we've done enough work that we can come to you and say, this is what we're thinking. And there's a whole lot of, feedback that would be welcome at this point in time. And really do want to engage with you as we're engaging with others in the field to think very carefully about the implications of some of the decisions we're making, and define this and set this up for success. I think we've had a lot of conversations of the goals of the credential, and there's been some agreement about direction. And now the rubber's hitting the road. We've got to get to the point where we're transitioning into launching a new system. So again, we have to set learning and verification requirements. We have to identify where the opportunities are, both in higher education as well as through sort of a professional pathway that focuses on training and job embedded opportunities. We need to think about salary requirements aligned with this system. And in fact, we'll be coming out with a salary scale aligned to the new sort of career pathway structure that's the backbone of the system this year. And we need the IT infrastructure. We need a registry and what we're now calling an Ed portal to manage this work. Can you go to the next slide? So concretely, here's where we are with all of these things. The green boxes are things that we're pretty far along on. And while this is an iterative process, so I hesitate to say anything that are done. These are almost done. We might have to iterate a little bit, but we feel pretty confident in building on those pieces that are in the solid green boxes. Green boxes with a yellow line around the outside, we're in process. And then the yellow boxes are some things that are coming next. So we have been working with AIR. We have a great team there doing this work with us. They have done extensive work looking at the current training opportunities and higher education courses, working with institutes of higher education to develop a new and aligned foundational certificate within the community colleges. We have, all of this is based on the competencies and leveling, and I'll show you what we've done so far on that has been done to set up sort of the foundational levels of the system that we'll then build on top of. We've talked a lot about wanting a system that both meets educators where they are right now, but also provides a map to the multitude of opportunities for somebody who's an expert educator and continues to develop professionally, and really expands the vision of those opportunities beyond you can be a teacher or you can be a director, and that you sort of have to choose between those two things, and only one of those gets you a salary increase. So I think we'll show some of the thinking around that. We are also recognizing that we need to think very carefully about the credentials and the opportunities that we provide for educational leaders, for directors, because they provide a very critical component of the infrastructure and really are an important way to leverage the expertise that grows in an educator that sticks around in the field for a long time and then can support others in learning and growing, and can support the development of approaches in the program that create a program site that's really focused on ongoing professional learning and supports educators in learning on their job. We are in the process of determining what the verification pathways are. This is where the rubber really hits the road. Like, what do you actually have to do? This is going to be what people really care the most about. And it's going to define what we develop. It's going to define how people move through the system. So we're working hard on those and have some good thinking on the first few levels to share. As I mentioned, we're also working on sort of defining what a career lattice looks like and the associated salary scales. We're not going to talk about that today, but there will be more in future meetings on that. And then to support movement on these verification pathways, we're really thinking about the degree pathways, the on-the-job training opportunities, as well as the role that apprenticeships play. We've done a lot of work in the apprenticeship space, and it provides a very important backbone to much of this work as well, and an important opportunity and one of the many ways that educators can move through the system. And then to move and start transitioning toward launching the system, we need to develop the IT business system. So this is really what we're now calling the educator portal. We should be posting a scope for that development work very soon. And our goal is sometime before the end of the fiscal year to get a minimum viable product up and running for testing. And at the same time, use this as an opportunity to do a soft launch of the credentialing system so we can start to provide the opportunity. While we will continue to have certification available, we can start to provide opportunities to test alternatives that would feed into the new credentialing system. You go to the next slide. So just calling out, I've said this a couple of times, but again, I think it's really important to recognize we're really thinking about two different pathways that are not necessarily separate. You can go back and forth between these, and we're also paying attention to the extent to which one can. But we recognize for some educators, higher education is the best way to go. And there's a lot of supports for moving through higher education and getting a degree, which is really important, both as a professional, but also for one's own personal growth and development and opportunities. And at the same time, for some people, higher ed it's just not a match. And we are taking everybody in the field and supporting them in their learning and growing as an educator. So there is a professional development pathway that we're looking at that is more focused on training, supported job embedded practice. You'll see that apprenticeships fit in both places. Apprenticeship is a structure. You can have an apprenticeship that supports you in both doing the work as well as moving through a higher ed program to achieve a certificate or degree, or an apprenticeship that leverages the training pathways that we're developing. In higher education too, our focus is on moving away from individual higher education courses, but really focusing on the ways in which we can give value and currency to certificates and degrees. And then underlying all of this, as one progresses, we do recognize that one's experience working in the field is an important component of all of this. It isn't the primary driver of movement, but it's also something that we do need to take into account and set some baseline expectations on as well. So those are also built in. I'm just going to pause, just make sure anybody on my team, anything else that you want to add before I jump ahead? Okay, go to the next slide. All right, so now we're moving into the slides. I will say none of these are pretty. We've been trying many different ways to try to visualize the system that does not yet exist so that people can start understanding what we're thinking about. This slide we've been using for in front of a number of different audiences, and we've gotten a fair amount of feedback. So after I go through this one, I'm going to show you an alternative to mapping the structures that we're playing around with and are just interested in feedback on. But fundamentally, we're thinking about these stair steps are the levels of expertise of an educator. So you start in, you come in at the entry level. This is where assistant teachers are, where a new FCC educator might be. Many OST educators come in without prior experience. And then you go through one of those pathways that I just talked about, and you achieve what's necessary to reach level 1, which really, maps to where our current teacher certification sits. It's a place where maybe an experienced FCC educator might want to go. And then continuing on, you can move on to level 2. We'll think about naming of the levels. Right now, it's just easier to number them. But at some point in time, we might want to think about a slightly more meaningful way to identify what these are. But at level 2, this maps pretty much to where, for example, lead teachers sit, but thinking across group and school age, all the different group and school age types, so both early childhood and out of school time, as well as family childcare. this is a place where an educator who's really experienced, knows how to manage a classroom, but also is supporting assistants working in the classroom, maybe in the out of school time. It's somebody who is a professional in the out of school time. We've had a lot of really interesting conversations recently about how different the out of school staffing structure is. And there are many people that come in and out of school time and are very valuable staff in the programs, but aren't necessarily on a professional ladder. And at the same time, you do have some people that are aiming to be an educator, either in out of school time or moving into education in another form. And this is a step along their pathway. And so there's a lot of thinking going on right now about, so what is that role for somebody that does have the training and the experience and can support the work of all the other folk working in the out of school time program that are bringing interests and skills and a desire to work with youth, but maybe not the experience and the planning and thinking about how to be responsive to children or to particular children and need somebody supporting that work. And then beyond that, we're starting to think sort of above our current system, thinking about where the director, the administrative roles sit, but also starting to try to identify the educational leadership roles, opportunities for mentorship. And again, mentorship, we can have mentors in all different program types. This is something we're thinking about in center-based programs as well as FCC, for FCC educators. Going beyond that, thinking about where do coaches sit in our system, curriculum specialists, training specialists. There are many opportunities and there are many roles that do exist outside of the classroom, but are very important to the functioning of the system. So both thinking about how do you create these fundamental credential levels, but also thinking about the roles of endorsement and supporting this. We need endorsements that are specialized around different age groups. As an example, we recognize that it is very different to teach infant toddlers than preschoolers. And that is something that we would want somewhere in as an educator moves through the system, we also have some clarity for this educator. Are they a generalist? Are they an infant toddler specialist? Who are they that would support hiring and matching to jobs? We are currently working on developing mentor training, which could feed a mentor endorsement, which is clearly very, very important, particularly to support apprenticeships, but also thinking about the ways in which mentors can be play an important role across the system in supporting the ongoing learning of educators, particularly as job embedded learning becomes more an important part of the system. And then also the administrator of endorsement and sort of where that particular set of skills sits that you need to run a program that aren't necessarily the educational skills, but they're the program management skills or the budgeting skills. They're all the things that really matter a great deal, but aren't always taught explicitly if you've come up as an educator. All right, so go to the next slide, and then I think I will pause for a minute. But this is our attempt working with AAR. Don't worry about the pictures and the words; they sort of mop something up for us really, really quickly. But trying to visualize what I just talked about in a different way that is a little less hierarchical, because it isn't quite so straightforward hierarchically when you start to get to the multiple paths. So starting at entry level, educator 1 and 2, you're sort of moving through building your skill in the classroom. I would say, I think we think about all those other roles do draw upon the skill set that one develops in the classroom, but very quickly you get to a place where there are many options in terms of what direction you might go in. You might be an educator that just wants to stay in the classroom, but's really interested in mentoring other teachers, or you might want to move into an administrator or an educational leadership role, or stop being a specialist and start leaving the classroom and going down a training or coaching pathway. And also recognizing, you can move across these. You're not choosing a pathway after you move on from a level 2. There are many different ways and combinations of expertise and roles that we could build on. And then also we want this to be ongoing and continuous opportunities, professional growth. We've talked a lot about a level 4, and you saw that in the prior slide. So thinking about, is there another level of educator expertise that is an option to continue on? What does that large bar at the bottom look like as we grow past some of these roles that we've identified here? I think for the moment, we're focusing development on what we are identifying here, because we need a starting place and we don't want to make this so big that we can't get started. But this is where our thinking has been to date. And I just realized there's a little bit that I'm going to get to in the next slide in the under educator level 1 and 2. So you can ignore the words there. We're going to dig more deeply into that. But in terms of the basic structure of this, just curious if there are any reactions or questions. Heidi.
I think it sounds very exciting, and I like the parallels that you put together. I find the other slide to be a little bit easier to look at, but I also appreciate the concept of making it so that it's not so lateral and there's multiple different ways to go through. I can see exactly where the challenge is and all of it. One thing that I think might be missing, which is, and maybe once going into the details, I think there's a difference between being a small center director or an assistant director or overseeing a small after-school program or something like that, and a larger program. So it's almost like the current structure of the director 1 versus director 2,
right?
Conceptually, but there definitely is some experience, knowledge of just becoming a supervisor for the first time and actually running the entire program. Again, depending on the size of the site and all that, but I think it looks good.
Thank you. No thoughts? Well, feel free to think and just jump in at any time with ongoing feedback as we move through this and go on to the next slide. So we're going back to the ladder, but we want to dig into what do these different pathways look like and what have we been thinking so far about, sort of what it would take to move through these levels. The entry level is pretty consistently EEC Essentials. I mean, this is what you need to come in. Obviously a BRC 2, we've gone back and forth on whether a BRC fits on this or not, but an educator can't get their own BRC right now. So it's a little hard to put it here and expect it as a requirement of the entry level. At the same time, it's important to acknowledge it's something you need to work. So we do need to think about that. So this is the higher education sequence. Moving into level 1, and here's level 1 and 2, you can start to see how the certificate that's being developed is playing into this. One thing, though, to call out that I will just keep saying, teacher certification gets you into the system without having to do anything else. So if you have a teacher certificate, you will be placed at level 1 when we make the transition. If you have a lead teacher certificate, you will be placed at level 2. We will identify where Director 1 and 2, for example, fit as well. All of the details that I'm talking about are really for consideration for new people coming into the field and for anybody in a program type that doesn't have certification built into it or who wants to move beyond where they currently are in the system as it stands. So if somebody chooses to go through a higher education pathway, either whole or in part, to get to level 1, then it's looking for completion of the first 2 courses that are required in the new certificate, which I believe, Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, are looking like there'll be an intro to early ed and then child growth and development. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And then also you can't complete the requirements for level 1 until you've had at least 9 months work experience. So effectively one school year worth of time in the classroom working as an educator, which pretty much aligns with where teacher certification is as well. And it does feel important, even though it may take people longer to complete the training or the coursework required. We did also want to make it clear that you can't just double up on your coursework and fly through these without having the experience in the classroom as well. To move to level 2, that's then completing the certificate that's under development. And I also need to say there are many things that aren't reflected here. So for example, CDA is going to be built into this. There are other things that we haven't put everything on the slides because it does become busy, and feel free to ask about things. But I just wanted to make it clear this isn't trying to capture everything. It's just trying to get a sense of some of the sort of core pathways we're building. to level 2, completing the certification, and again, having a minimum of 1 full year of experience working in the classroom. And then thinking about how associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees and additional experience expectations could build in to level 3 and 4 on this pathway. Go to the next slide. And then for the professional development pathway, this is something that we're also trying to, I think this is a newer approach and something that we are thinking very carefully about. And also, I think there are a lot more pieces that we have to figure out on the implementation side. So the early piloting of the system is going to be very important to really get it right. But again, certification gets you in where without anything additional, teacher for level 1, lead teacher for level 2. Not talking about the administrator level yet, because this particular slide is not focused on the educational leadership or the administrative component of the system. We haven't developed that part yet, but that is something that will be coming. But then we looked at how the expectations, we wanted some commensurate set of expectations across these 2 pathways. So we're sort of thinking about the number of hours of time in courses and coursework on the higher ed side, and thinking about, well, how does that translate into a system where there's some training, there's some practice? It's really a mix of both learning knowledge, but also applying it and learning how to use the skills in the classroom and being supported in doing that. So we've identified that to get to level 1, we need to start developing packages that reflect about 120 PD hours, which is a combination, to be clear, of some training time in courses, in trainings that meet all of the competencies that we have identified across the credential levels or for this level, but also includes some support, some PLCs where you're processing the information, you're thinking with peers about the implications of what you're learning, some supported practice where you're out trying things and somebody's giving you feedback on how you're trying things. We've also recognized that some support in implementing curriculum will be important. So all of those need to be built into the package, and that's something that we're thinking a fair amount right now about how to do. And similarly, there would be minimum work expectations. But again, I think, you could see how you could spend 1 academic year working in a program and going through the training, but it also might take longer for somebody. And then to move to level 2, it's an additional 200 hours of this integrated professional development. So combination of training as well as supported practice and job embedded opportunities for practice. And in this case, a minimum, and this is cumulative now. We're not saying an additional 2 years, but on minimum, you have to have been in the field for 2 years to move on to this level. And working on level 3 and level 4, I think that, again, we want to get this right, and we want these pathways to be commensurate with each other and high quality and really generate the skill set that we want to see. So we want to move deliberately through the system and take our time in getting it right. Just pause for any questions or reactions.
Hi, Jocelyn. I do have it's Cheryl. I have a couple of questions. Do you want me to wait, or do you want me to
jump right in? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So on the levels, are the hours in addition to their annual hours?
Required by licensing?
Yes.
No, it would all be integrated. I think one other thing that we will have to work out is what the ongoing renewal expectations are. And I think when to implement this fully, this has to be part of the reg revision. Yeah. So I think the one thing to keep in mind is there is an opportunity to make sure those things work together.
Thank you. Your answer leads into, I was going to ask, once they hit the level and they have the 200 hours, how do they maintain that?
Right.
If there are going to be requirements for maintaining that. And then the last question was on the previous slide where there was the degrees, are they specific degrees in early childhood, or is it a related field and so many credits?
Yes, and so for a bachelor's to just count for a level, it would have to be an early childhood or related field. The other thing we do though want to think about, although we haven't done it yet, is where does somebody who has that bachelor's in science or something that is not a related field but may choose to be interested in working in an early ed program for a variety of reasons, like what is the requirement there, recognizing that there's some skills about teaching young children and working with young children that we would want somebody to have, and we can't count on the degree providing that, but they do have a significant amount of higher education.
Perfect. And then the training hours, do they have to be from certain agencies, CEUs, IACT, just
We
regular?
will, for this particular pathway to count for this, again, we're moving cautiously. We will want to approve everything that counts. So it isn't going to be something that you can put together your own package. We will identify who the entities are that can provide these things and what each sort of training package counts for.
Great, thank you.
But we'll have a process outside that we'll over time develop and make public and available, because I think we'll start by building this with the systems that we have. But again, we'd love to create a system where it's broadly accessible for entities to come in and say, hey, I have this great training practice, and I think it would fit. Also really love it to live in a world, and nothing's ever perfect, but where everything that educators are doing to learn and grow as a professional is helping them to move through the system.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the next slide. We've conducted a fair amount of stakeholder engagement. I referenced this earlier. We've been talking with you, and we'll continue to talk with you. We also have started a working group that meets now monthly to sort of get ongoing updates and give us feedback in the sort of weedy nuts and bolts of the development process. There's a team on the community college side that's meeting regularly to engage with us, and we are now in the process of engaging with our PDCs, our ECSOs, all the folks that we are currently funding to develop and provide professional learning. We're also thinking about different program types and ways in which we can engage with leaders from different program types to make sure that what we're building will reflect those. And I'll just say, before anybody asks, Head Start should be on this list. We started some of those conversations. We also make sure that we include Head Start here. Go to the next slide. So one thing that I referenced in the beginning that is something that has been completed. So again, we've developed a set of competency expectations for level 1 and 2. And AIR conducted a survey looking both at what's available through the community colleges as well as what the PDC and the Academy provide to try to understand how the courses that we currently have available in the system fit with the credential competencies. So, the process was really to share the competencies and then to ask people to go through a process of identifying, how do the learning goals of the course align with those competencies. Go to the next slide. And just for reference, these are the competency domains. So we thought we've been thinking about it across these domains between sort of like how, and within each domain, there are a number of specific competencies, but looking at responsive and supportive interactions, family engagement, the learning environment, curriculum assessment, and some professionalism expectations as well. I think if you click, I think this one is animated, Addiston. So looking across level 1 first, I think you can see across all the different entities that AIR reached out to, there was reasonable coverage of responsive and supportive interactions, reasonable coverage of the learning environments. These are sort of the percentages of courses that cover these things, and professionalism as well. Curriculum and assessment had some, less on family engagement side, but overall, for most of the domains, there are some courses that are currently available. When you move up and start thinking about the level 2 competencies, I think you can see that the offerings are fewer, and there is definitely more work that we have to do to build out opportunities across the system as a whole for those to move and meet the level 2 competencies. So this certainly helps us focus our attention on how do we how do we get ready to provide these opportunities, really focusing on what we have and adapting what we have to meet the level 1 requirements, and doing some development work to make sure that training and coursework is available to support people in getting to level 2. And I think that was everything I had on the credential, unless anybody wants to add anything. Or are there any further questions? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen to talk about where we are with career pathways.
Great. Thanks, Jocelyn. And actually, Sarah Steen is here today to talk a little bit about the work that she's doing with Career Pathways and also the ECE scholarship. So Sarah, if you just want to get started, I think Addison, we can go to the next slide, please.
Thanks, Ellen and Addison. So I'm just going to give you a general high-level overview of the current state of our programming for the EEC Career Pathways and Scholarship. So as most of you probably know, the Career Pathways Grant is agreements that we have with the 15 public community colleges to support early childhood staff in taking college courses. And at each of the colleges, there is a dedicated person to provide guidance and support to educators. You can find this on our Career Pathways webpage. If you scroll down to the bottom, you will see a list of all of the community colleges and the contact person at each college, who are really the best people to guide educators through what they might need. These people will provide assistance with class and program selection and enrollment. The courses are at college level and support EEC certification and college level certificates or degrees. So all of the classes can be used for multiple purposes. And there's also support with textbooks, tutoring, mentoring, library services, and other resources available through the community colleges. Each community college campus has a wide variety of resources that become available to Career Pathway students when they start taking classes. And I think this tends to be pretty underutilized. So it's a great resource that Career Pathway students should learn about and take advantage of. And then as educators get through their classes and decide they want to continue with their coursework, there is assistance and support applying for the Early Educator Scholarship for further coursework. So the community colleges have pretty much begun their fall classes at this point. Many of them are offering classes that start in October. Accelerated shorter classes, which are not necessarily easier because they're shorter, because they are accelerated and they still cover the same amount of coursework that one would cover in a full semester class. But there are still options available, and in the next month or so, colleges will probably start releasing their spring schedules and start enrolling for their January and spring classes. So it's always a good time to get in touch and find out when the upcoming dates would be for enrollment. As you know, the colleges enroll on semester schedules, so students really have to be mindful of when classes start. There is not an immediate on-demand start to these courses. Next slide, please. So eligibility for Career Pathways, having an active account in the Professional Qualifications Registry, living and working in Massachusetts, and being employed for at least 20 hours a week or intend to be employed. So this is really a way that educators can get into the field if they are not currently employed or haven't been currently employed for long enough to qualify for the scholarship. They can access Career Pathways courses with the intention of getting a job, and oftentimes the coordinator at the community college can help support them because they are aware of programs that are looking for people. There are some general terms and conditions of participation, agreeing to complete the courses, completing some data, and that kind of stuff. And then different colleges have different requirements. Some will ask to see a high school diploma and whatnot. Being in good financial and academic standing is important and required. And some colleges right now are also requiring application to the college in a pathway toward matriculation, and some are requiring completion of the FAFSA to access different types of financial aid services. Next slide. How to access career pathways. So selecting a community college, again, this is all on our website, our Career Pathways website. We encourage students to consider the proximity of where they are to the college, as well as previous coursework. If educators have taken coursework previously at a community college, it's really quite important for them to return to that community college to have the most credits as possible from one institution. Using the information on our website, they can send an email to the Career Pathways Grant Coordinator. Students really have to be mindful of their email accounts, their inboxes, because they will get information back from grant coordinators asking them to complete forms perhaps, or submit a college, high school transcript and whatnot. And so we always encourage people to have previous college transcripts or high school diplomas available in case they are requested. I am always available to help support educators, but really the best pathway is to reach out directly to the college. There's also on that website that Eugenia dropped in the chat. Thank you, Eugenia. There is a list of community colleges sorted by town. So you can look at where you live and you can find the community college that is closest to where you live. Next slide, please.
Sorry, actually, Sarah, before you move on, I just want to say, sort of reiterate a couple of things that Chris said about Career Pathways and the current budget. So again, Career Pathways was funded at $5 million in the current budget, with the expectation that all the investment in scholarships that's been going on would support access to coursework. And I think I just want to reiterate, we are working with the community colleges and with our budget to identify how to continue and sustain all students that have been supported with Career Pathways. Sarah's highlighting the fact that courses are still available. There's still a process to come into Career Pathways. Also recognizing that we might need to create some new things for students that don't qualify for traditional scholarships that we can support the Career Pathways programs with. So all that is in the works, but I do want to just say, make sure everybody's aware that courses are available. People can enroll in courses through Career Pathways. That has not stopped or changed.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Okay. Thanks. You can go to the next slide, Addison. So in addition to the Career Pathways pathway, we also support the Early Childhood Educator Scholarship, which we administer jointly with the Department of Higher Education. And this is designed to help specifically educators increase their qualifications through a college degree or college level certificate. The scholarship is a funding source, a source of financial aid, and less a program that has supports that go with it, although Career Pathways staff and coordinators can help you apply for the scholarship. The financial assistance is based on a per credit rate depending on the type of institution. And you can take, unlike the other Mass Educate and Mass Reconnect, the scholarship allows you to take 1 class, 2 classes, or 3 classes per semester. So for students who just want to take one at a time, since they are also required to work in the field, this is a really good option. And the current application for the 24-25 academic year is open through October 1st. So there is still time to apply for this current semester and current year. Next slide, please. So here are just some updates that we put in place for 2025. We increased who was eligible for the scholarship. We added employees at residential and placement programs. So anybody who works at center-based programs, family child care programs in their homes, out of school time, and residential placements are eligible. We increased the eligible majors. So we added psychology, elementary education, special education, social work, and human services to include folks specifically in out of school time and or residential placement treatment programs who want to take classes that are more school age based and less early childhood education based. We also proposed a an award per credit increase. So you can see the amount that is awarded per credit, depending on the type of institution that you apply for, and how much you might get as a maximum per semester if you were to take the full 9 credits. Just to reiterate, because the scholarship is a financial assistance type of initiative, you would also apply to the college, and you can select from a list of colleges that are also on our website that fall into the different categories there. Next slide, please. There are a few more eligibility requirements for the scholarship. I'm not going to go over them all. They are also on our website. I think the biggest ones that people need to take into consideration is the work requirement. So there is a work requirement of 20 hours per week and at least 6 months. It is not 6 months at your current position necessarily. It's 6 months in the field. So if you just started a new job, but had been at a previous job before that, and your start date is at least 6 months ago, you would be eligible. Working at an EEC licensed or funded program, so the programs that EEC Family Child Care Homes, center-based and out-of-school time residential school placements. There is the requirement to matriculate, different than career pathways. This is for a full certificate or degree pathway, so you would apply and matriculate at the college. And then a big one also is that in order to, before you can apply for the scholarship, you must apply for the FAFSA. You do not have to be eligible for federal student aid, but you just, it's a mechanism for tracking and finding and identifying you and getting into the Massachusetts system. It is a Department of Higher Ed and federal requirement. And so people would complete the FAFSA. There's a lot of support out there for the FAFSA. Community colleges can refer you to that support, and I can help you with that as well. Next slide. There's a few resources here that when Addison sends out the slide deck, you can access. I will also say that I am hosting one more early childhood scholarship education information session next week. It's very close to the deadline to apply for the scholarship, so I encourage you to complete your FAFSA first and then come to the session and get more support completing the application process. And that is my wrap up. So
Did I see, Lisa, was your hand up? Oh, I think you just put it in the chat.
I did. Sorry. I, again, apologize for my earlier audio. Yeah, I'm just wondering, Sarah, do you know, have you seen a significant decrease in the applications because of Mass Reconnect and Mass Educate?
The timing was really tough for people because of when the budget was signed and whatnot. So all of the career pathways folks are helping people to understand all of the different funding sources that are available to them and helping them to apply for them. We are hoping to track that information. And so once students are set in their classes and their funding sources are finalized, we hope to have better information about which sources of funding funded the most people. Some scholarship applications are still outstanding since the scholarship application is still open. So we don't know yet who exactly qualifies for what funding, but it's definitely something that we are paying careful attention to try to just collect information and get a better understanding of how it worked out this semester.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And Jocelyn, I loved the pathway. And I have to say that I am a very visual and I loved the revised version for so many. So thank you.
Okay.
And Lisa, I would just add also, we meet with the Department of Higher Ed around the scholarship about every other week. And they're tracking carefully the frequency for, scholarship applications. And because the awards were increased, they've disseminated more funds this fall than ever before. So we're we're keeping a close eye on that as well.
Thank you. Terrific.
I think we can go to the next slide, Addison. And this is something that Chris mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. And there's two new things that we wanted to bring to your attention. One is there's new funding, 7.5 million for an additional early educator scholarship. And we've included the budget language here, and I know Addison's going to send out the slides, so you'll have an opportunity to take a look at it. And this is a scholarship in partnership with the Department of Higher Ed. And looking at the eligibility requirements is written into budget language, but also we're taking some time to look at the scholarship as it is now and career pathways funding as it is right now, and to make sure that as we think about who has not been included or who has not had access to some of the funding, that we take that into account as we think about standing up a new scholarship. And then in the next slide, as if you can go to the next slide, there's a new budget language around another $7.5 million for a loan forgiveness program for early educators. And here again, we'll be working in partnership with the Department of Higher Education and looking at the parameters around eligibility for loan forgiveness. And so I think in the next slide, you'll see the things that, Addison, if we could just go to the next slide. Our next steps are around working with the Board of Higher Education to determine the best approach to both of these new initiatives. As we've been doing is gathering stakeholder feedback and then looking at partners for implementation. This would be a lot of work. We've done a lot of good work with the Department of Higher Ed, even in the development and dissemination of the Early Childhood Ed Scholarship, as evidenced in Sarah's work. So there's a lot more to come, and I'm hopeful that we'll keep you apprised of our progress on this. And we've been meeting for the last couple of weeks with DHE on this. So more to come, and happy to answer any questions, or also just have you take a look at the budget language if you have time and send along questions or suggestions.
Yeah, can we just take the slides down for a second, Addison? Because I think it might be worth, we're thinking a lot about both of these things. And like, these are clearly opportunities to really support the specific needs of our field. And we really, appreciate having the opportunity to do that level of thinking. But for both a scholarship, because, there, again, as we pointed out, there are a lot of scholarships out there. So part of what we're thinking is like, what are the needs that our field has that are not met by the current set of opportunities that are available? And then also on the loan forgiveness side, like, how do we, like, what's the best way to think about how we should set priorities for that money, who it feels most urgent to support with that funding? I think maybe just for organization, like if we could just take a minute, and any thoughts that you have on the scholarship front first around, things that you're aware of, gaps in current opportunities, things that we should be paying attention to and thinking about as we take the opportunity to design a new program. It would be great to hear from this group. I mean, I can throw out an idea that we've, sort of been recognizing.
Amy has one.
Oh, go ahead.
I would
please.
just say that you guys have done so much, and to get this, as how can we help get this information out to the field? We had the commissioner on the 9:30 call yesterday with 192 people. Senator Lewis came on the 9:30 call today and was disappointed with his 90 people. He's very competitive, he said. Because I think, especially when you think about all the policy that got passed, like, where does this fit in? So any way we can be helpful, because I think, and then another question that's been coming up is like all this connection to quality. So how do we start tying those things together? It's incredible, like all the infrastructure that has been created, and we've been talking about many of these things, many of us for decades on this call. So I think to see the progress that's been made, and the opportunity to, like, your kind of continuous improvement theory is important. Because I think the field is, as they're just feeling like there's a lot happening, and they all want to do the best, work. And these parts I think are really important. So I think any way we can help, really appreciate seeing everything today.
Great, thank you, Amy. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, and Amy, as it shapes up and we have more concrete, we're sensitive to the needs of the field and how we communicate to the field about these opportunities. So, you know,
the other thing we've been thinking about big pictures, like where does this all fit together? Because we're hearing about apprenticeships, you know, you're hearing about all the different pathways. And we'd love to talk with you even offline about that, about how we can kind of start mapping this. Not that you all have to do it all, but like how can we all take these pieces and put them together? Thanks.
Heidi?
Yeah, I think my first thought is the biggest obstacle that I had heard of you resolved, which was the scholarship was limited to people who are studying early childhood education. And by expanding that to other majors, that was tremendous and significant. I agree with Amy that we need to do a better job at communicating that with people because I don't think they necessarily know. But that would, to me, that was a major first step. So thank you for that. A pure question, I don't know if it's an option, but I do know that there are people who went to schools outside of Massachusetts and are here studying in or working in early childhood programs. And I wonder if the loan forgiveness could be potentially directed to people who might not have been able to take advantage of the scholarship, in part because they went to school out of state, or like I have somebody that I was just talking to yesterday. She works for me and she's going to school remotely at SNHU. So it's a New Hampshire school, so therefore she wouldn't qualify for the scholarship. Which do I necessarily want her to transfer to a Massachusetts-based school? Not necessarily. I want her to help her get her degree, but she's going to finish, and she's would not have been able to participate in that.
Thanks, Heidi. I mean, one thing that we've been thinking a lot about is, you know, we have many educators in our field that for a variety of reasons have not jumped into higher education or not necessarily comfortable right away in higher education. And one thing that Career Pathways has done very successfully is build a pathway in through, you know, you don't have to matriculate, you can take a course, and then it's an opportunity to get your feet wet and have some success, get to know people in a college, get some support advising, you know, start to get drawn into a pathway. So that is something that we do want to think about, you know, sort of collectively across all these programs, how we do continue to support, because it feels very important, particularly for our educators. And then also trying to think about, like, for the loan forgiveness, like, yes, who has not had access to scholarships? Maybe longer term educators that, you know, got their degrees before there were as many scholarship supports. That was something else that a suggestion that came up. So a lot of thinking to do. Hold on.
I do agree with the fact that we have to be cognizant that it's great that all the resources are here now, are here now, but they weren't for many people prior.
Yeah.
And some good people made maybe some not so good choices. But we want to keep them and cultivate them in the field. And we may, you know, looking at, can we be a little more lenient with what gets forgiven so that they can have access to take care of going back to school, returning to school, staying in school now, if what they did prior doesn't fit into kind of a neat package.
Well, let me just say back to you an example of what comes to mind when you say that. So somebody that may not ever have actually successfully completed a degree, but has taken many courses, potentially in different institutions, and has some debt related to that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. And again, echoing what Ellen said, feel free to follow up with thoughts. We have one more part of the presentation. We want to talk about the apprenticeship work that we've been doing. I'm going to turn it over to Arjun to do that.
Great. We can get the slides back up for this part. Hi, everyone. I'm Arjun Shah. I am the Preschool Development Grant Manager at EEC. And in that role, I'm taking a lead role in supporting EEC's apprenticeship work. So EEC is continuing to work closely with our partners at the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development to support the expansion of early ed apprenticeship across the state. Currently, we're working with 5 partners across the state who are working towards graduating a total of 275 apprentices. This is primarily at centers, but we also have one program focusing on after school, and most of the programs are focused on entry-level positions, but we also have a few folks at the leadership level as well. It's important to note here in the red that EULWD has also announced a new funding opportunity. The deadline is rapidly approaching, and this is a good opportunity to pursue for early ed apprenticeship programs that are existing and want to continue, and for new programs to get registered. Just pausing on this slide for a bit, over the course of the work that we've done with these programs and stakeholder engagement we've done over the last year or so, we've identified a few challenges in making apprenticeship work. There's a lack of access to mentor training across the state. We're hoping to solve that with our work with Holyoke Community College to develop mentor training that we're going to deploy across the state. There's challenges with a whole host of infrastructure, from recruiting programs to place apprentices at, to creating pipelines for recruiting apprentices, managing that apprentices experience, making sure that they're successful. There's challenges incentivizing, supporting educator participation, and just covering the cost of administering an apprenticeship program, especially with the additional burden that puts on childcare programs administratively. And there's also challenges we've heard about the uncertainty of an upcoming credentialing system, which is going to shift expectations for educator competencies that are developed through an apprenticeship program. And all these challenges that I'm naming are essentially double for FCC apprenticeship programs, which there currently are no registered apprenticeship programs in the state. And educators are often working in isolation and in ways that make the mentorship and training that comes with an apprenticeship program really tough to implement in that setting. And so if we go to the next slide, I want to talk about how EEC is supporting here to develop workforce development pathways. We have started working with 4 organizations. 3 of those are FCC-focused organizations across the state, and we're providing full regionalized coverage across the state. So we have SEIU's Education Support Fund, which is covering the Southeast and Cape regions, Family Services of Central Mass, which is covering Central and Western Mass, and then United Way of Mass Bay, which is covering Metro Boston and the Northeast region. And we're also working with one organization to pilot a center-based approach, and that's Community Group up in the Northeast. This work is all building on the existing partnerships that we've had with these programs and with the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development. And we're investing pretty heavily on the FCC side, so we can expand access to apprenticeship and programs that have a lot of that strong learn-to-earn characteristic, learn and earn characteristic, but in a way that works for the unique needs of FCCs. There are 4 main things that each of the vendors are doing in this work. One is that they're creating systems for recruitment of childcare programs, potential apprentices, mentors, and supporting that overall placement and monitoring of that apprentice's success. Second, they're creating new programs and aligning existing programs to the future credential standards to smooth that transition that will be occurring over time as credential gets closer. The third thing they're doing is developing regional partnerships to support the creation of pipelines and to position these workforce development pathways as strong options for development within their region. And then the fourth thing they're doing is a simple one, but I think one that will be supportive to the field, which is deploying funding directly to apprenticeship and program participants, apprentices and program participants, which is going to support and incentivize their participation in these pathways. So we are just starting off. In the current moment, a lot of the coming work is to get these programs ready to deploy, and that means focusing on number 2 here, which is aligning these programs to future EEC credential and quality standards, so we know that we're providing educators a strong and a competency-aligned experience. On the FCC side, that means we're doing work across these 3 vendors to build a new program that combines the expertise that each of these partners bring. If for those of you familiar with the work that these programs do, Family Services has great strengths in their current CDA apprenticeship program. United Way has great strengths in the licensing of business support that they already provide for FCCs. And SEIU has great strengths in the work that they've done around registered apprenticeship across other states. And then in the center-based world, we're building on the success of Community Group's current apprenticeship, while also making sure that their program aligns with the future credential and has expanded access across that Northeast to really make them a central player and option for apprenticeship in that region. And this is all gearing up for us to get launched and have these programs on the ground and the supports available starting in early 2025. So I'll pause there for questions. Yeah.
Addison, I think you can take the slides down. That is it for the presentation portion of the discussion. But also want to give people time, you've had a chance to process. There has been a lot, to Amy's point. There are a lot of pieces. They all do fit together, but it's hard to see it sometimes when you're in the middle of creating all the pieces. So happy to answer questions or take reflections at this point too. And hi, Commissioner.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry to be joining so late. Sounds like without me here, you actually are going to be able to end early. Need to make a habit of it.
We do have one hand up. Jessica, go ahead.
Hi, friends. I just wanted to run another board with an apprenticeship with the health fields. And what they are doing in regards to placement is that they're looking for, I guess it would be programs in this situation to take full ownership. So they're paying, they're providing health services and things of that sort. So looking at the full scope, not just pay, because a lot of people are looking for that extra benefit of employment, sustainability, as well as health insurance. So that's just one example. And then for, I just wanted to uplift what Cheryl said about how are we being reflective of people who are currently in the field and currently in debt, and how this money can be flexible to people who are currently in the field to excel their career or things of that sort. And I apologize, I was also late, I was teaching, but I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you, Jessica. When teaching is important.
I just have one quick other statement is or question, comment is we do Fisher College does a lot of work with some of the apprenticeship programs currently, and some of the feedback that we've had from some of the agencies is access to the materials that we're providing. So we use Canvas as our modality, and whilst we try to use OERs, so there's less expense on the student having to purchase textbooks, but not everything is always available in their language. And providing outside resources is helpful because sometimes the colleges and universities are restricted based on their accreditation on what we can offer versus for translation services and things within our academic programs. So, and not just traditional, we have a large Neighborhood Villages as a large Portuguese speaking population that we're trying to service. So I think having access outside for apprenticeship programs is crucial. And if we want people to go in person, we should look at also providing offset funding so they can have childcare, non-traditional hours to be able to attend classes.
Thank you. Well, again, you know where to find us if you have any follow-up thoughts. And Commissioner, did you want to close us out since you weren't able to open this up?
Sure. I mean, it sounds like you covered most of the things that were on our agenda, but I'll close out with two things I got to do today. One is I was at the Worcester office before the advisory council meeting, and we have returned to in-person orientations for prospective providers. And we had 29 family childcare providers. This is a fully Spanish session at the Worcester office, and 39 showed up. So it was pretty amazing to see all those family childcare providers who are interested in coming into the field and into the business in that room. It was amazing. And I think registration closed. There were others who might be interested. So I think it's great. And I think it's everything that's been happening that's making it easier to come into the field and the interest in the field. And then I was not able to participate in this meeting because I'm out in Clinton, where I was with Governor and Secretaries Hutweiler and Acting Commissioner Johnston from Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, when we were announcing the Literacy Launch Initiative, which is a pre-K all the way to 3rd grade. And the emphasis was really on the interagency collaboration and making sure we're delivering on early literacy and resources in partnership between the schools and our community partnerships, as the Secretary said, regardless of setting, that we're helping support our youngest learners with the early literacy skills they need. So pretty exciting day for early education. So I'm sorry I couldn't join you, but that's the view from the field today. And I also want to just thank the team. I know we got to provide a fairly significant update on the credentialing work, and that's been something we have been hoping for from the very beginning of the start of this agency. And Jocelyn, you and your team in collaboration with AIR are going to land this. So really looking forward to that coming to fruition. So, and just thank all of you for being here today and your ongoing support.
Thanks, Commissioner. Appreciate you. And all the hard work that everyone did today to present to the council. And again, the materials will be following up later this afternoon. If you guys have any questions ever, you guys know who to email. And I look forward to seeing you at our next council meeting. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.